How you doing? Welcome to another video. Today's video is how to have a responsible relationship with alcohol. Think about all the uses for alcohol other than putting it into your mouth and getting drunk with it, right? Rubbing alcohol, surface disinfectant, hand sanitizer, we all know that. Sterilization, ink and paint solvent maybe, deodorant, antiperspirant, perfumes, fragrances, colognes, cleaning agents, coolants, fuel, preservatives. I once saw a brain sitting in a jar filled with alcohol, or it was an alcohol-based solution, but it was alcohol. The alcohol is used to fix and preserve the brain's cellular structure, right? No more decomposition or degradation. And fixing means that the chemical crosslinks are formed between the proteins and other molecules in the tissues, and it effectively freezes the cellular structures in place. And we put that into our bodies. Alcohol gets through the blood-brain barrier. Now, the blood-brain barrier is meant to protect your brain, right? And it gets through neat, right? It doesn't dilute at all, just gets through as is. So my point here, and the title of the video, is that a truly responsible relationship with alcohol can only be achieved when the alcohol stays in the bottle and out of your body, right? If you deliberately put alcohol into your body, you can't really say this is responsible, even though big alcohol love putting out these propaganda messages of the same thing, right? Responsible drinking. Don't be irresponsible in your drinking. You have to be responsible, right? So let's take another viewpoint on this, right? Responsible drinking message. You know, one of the biggest, if not the biggest reason I stopped drinking was because I was partially responsible, or I felt I was partially responsible. I was, for my son taking up this drug. I'm a big believer in free will. I'm a big believer in personal responsibility, 100% personal responsibility. No matter what happens to me, I've got to own it, because if I don't own it, if I start blaming other people or other things or other situations or environments or the time of the month or my youth or my upbringing or my parents and so on and on and on, right? I allow a victim mentality to plant seeds, right? To dig its roots into my brain. And that's an easy way out, right? Alcohol drinking is an easy way out of a problem. You know, you don't solve the problem, but you don't have to think about it. So it's open up a bottle, pour the stuff down your neck, and you get so drunk you don't have to think about these problems anymore, right? Now, what I was talking about with personal responsibility, free will, I can bring that back to my son, right? And say to him, you know, like, he has his own mind, he can do his own things, but, you know, that's not, I can only focus on myself and my responsibility, right? And that's not what I wanted to be as a father, passing down the knowledge of how to drink a pint or how to drink 10 pints or how to hold your drink so that, you know, you don't get sick or you can drink more, that kind of stuff. You know, the stuff that I learned when I was a kid, not off my dad, but off my mates, you know. Now, I don't want to pass down stuff like that you need alcohol for anything in life, that alcohol is a solution to anything, that alcohol is fun, all that kind of stuff. You know, sons tend to look up to their fathers, right? You know, children tend to look up to their parents. In my opinion, sons tend to idealize their fathers to some extent, especially when they're younger. I still do, right? I'm 57 and my dad's gone these few years, but I still idolize him, you know, for who he was and how he brought us up and just some of the lessons that I learned from my dad. So, you know, the job of getting them to follow in your footsteps, and that includes becoming drug users just like dad, you know, it's not such a hard job to do, right? Follow the leader. Now, responsible parenting, being a responsible dad. First, you know, let me stick to that, being a responsible dad. And I'm talking about this purely from a personal perspective. I don't want to preach, You know, everyone knows what it is for themselves to be a responsible dad. But, you know, I can only talk about being a responsible dad and sons looking up to their dad because that's where my experience lies, okay? You know, because I don't know what it is to be a mum, for instance, although I've had to learn a tiny bit of that role, or I was trying to learn a tiny bit of that role. I was forced into it a little bit with the situation that I went through. But I can only see things from my point of view, right? The lessons are the same, I think. You just might have to change them to better fit your life and what you want for your kids, right? So for me, when I was trying to learn these things about being a responsible dad, long after I should have learned a lot of these things, that's neither here nor there, but you know, it is by the way. I learned that being a responsible dad is setting your kid up as best you can. You know, it's worthwhile pointing that out. You can only be the best dad that you can possibly be at that time. And that's a tough job, to do the best that you can. It's not a job that you get to take a break from, this parenting stuff. It's not a job that comes with a manual, you know. So all you can do is the best that you can to be able to deal with, set them up as best you can for their life, that they can live as best as they can for this roller coaster ride that they're going to go on, right? Set them up as best as they can. So how about being a responsible adult, right? Take away the parenting, just you on your own for yourself. And I know all about that as well, you know. It's just one of those things, you know. Every single injury that I've had was caused by alcohol while drunk. I was in forestry for 15 years, hugging around the chainsaw, never got injured. I got a cut once on my hand and that was about it. But responsible. I was being responsible for that. But then when I was coming home, I was chugging this stuff down. You know, that's not something I ever wanted to pass on to my son either, right? All that kind of stuff. Being injured while you were drunk, putting yourself in a position, in a situation where you're being injured while you were drunk, right? Every out of control argument that I've ever had was caused through alcohol. Every violent confrontation I ever had was caused through alcohol. You know, and that's not something that I'm proud of. It's not something I wanted to pass on to my son either. And by the way, if you're looking to get on this journey, if you want to get yourself unplugged from this delusion, to stop the alcohol flow, to do the work, to move on to better things in your life, we've still got our beginner's course in the comments below. Beginner's Guide to Getting and Staying Sober. It's still free. The link's in the description, like I said. It's just a short course, an introduction to what we offer on the main program. If you'd like more structured, more comprehensive help from me, you might consider joining us on our Habits V2 program. You know, the link is also in the description. This is where I spend most of my time, usually in the background. I just like creating stuff. It's nice to be able to create stuff there which is kind of sequenced. So you learn one thing one day and then the next thing you build on what you've learned the day before. And that goes for a full year. So we've a great community of people. As I said, this masterclass is structured around preparation to stop the flow, get into that amazing first year milestone. Like I said, the link is in the description down below. So in the plug, thank you for listening to that. Now, responsibility, take that to the wider sense, right, in your community. This, of course, you know, it ties back into what I was talking about before about being a responsible adult. You know, alcohol is a gateway drug. I'm not saying that everyone who starts taking alcohol is going to rush out and get blasted on heroin once they start using alcohol. I started with cigarettes when I was 12, then I moved to alcohol, then I had some weed, and then I was taking E's and mushrooms, LSD, speed, coke. Weed I used for about 15 years. And the rest I was just dabbling in it, right? And the hardest drug I do now is caffeine in the morning, a caffeine shot. So, but when I'm talking about gateways, I'm talking about within the single drug. You know, even if there's no elevation to other drugs in your life, those gateways still happen within the alcohol habit itself, right? You know, one line is crossed, for instance, when you start using alcohol. You know, you've never used alcohol before and all of a sudden now you have used alcohol. And it's a psychological line that you cross, that you can't go back over. You can't become a person who has never used alcohol, right? The same for any other drug in life. You know, once you take a drug, you can't step back across that and say, well, you know, I've never used that, right? But it makes it easier once you've stepped across that line to have a second go and a third go and a fourth go, and to keep going and keep moving forwards. And you pass these gateways when you drink more than one evening a week, for instance. You know, you start out and you have a few drinks, maybe once a month with your mates or something like that. And then it becomes maybe once every 2 weeks, and then once a week, and then twice a week, and so on and so forth, right? Other gateways are passed when you drink more than, you know, you have a couple of beers to start out with, and then you have 3, and then you drink more than 4 beers, for instance. Or, you know, you pass a gateway when you go from 1 bottle of wine to yourself to opening a second bottle. That's another gateway. These are subtle, right? I'm not saying that they're things that happen overnight, and you know, you can pass backwards and you can drink, you know, more than 1 bottle. But once you've crossed over that line into drinking, you know you can do it. You know, it's a psychological trick that you play on yourself. It's a psychological line that you pass over, and they're powerful psychological lines as well. You know, when we're talking about building a habit or building addictions. And what's the last one? Finally, I think, take a look at responsibility for yourself, right? To yourself, to your body, to your brain, to your life, to your health, to your wealth, to your growth, to your energy levels, to your time, to your passions, to your potential. Look at your responsibility to your own levels of self-confidence and self-esteem and self-efficacy. You know, that belief that you can do anything. You know, to your ability to think, to make choices, to make decisions, and to turn those thoughts and choices and decisions into actions, into reality in your life, into growth and pursuing the things that you want to do. This all comes down to choices and trade-offs, right? Like I said earlier on, it's the choice that you start out to make to have a drink leads to a trade-off in your brain. You know, the choice to put the toxin into your body has massive trade-offs, immediate trade-offs with what you can do with that time and energy at the moment, and long-term trade-offs with what you will do with your life, right? And this all comes down to, again, responsibility. Or another way to look at responsibility is your ability to respond. You know, let's go back to the beginning of the video and think of all the uses that I pointed out: the rubbing alcohol, the surface disinfectant, the hand sanitizer, sterilization, cleaning agent, coolant, as a fuel, as a preservative. Think about that brain fixed in the jar full of alcohol. Think about that and think, is this something you really want to be putting inside your mouth, into your body on a regular basis at all? You know, does that sound like somebody who is acting responsibly? Right? These are all lessons that I've gone through. You know, this is all stuff that I've had to realize for myself, and I had nobody else telling me that. So take it as whatever. You know, if you want to have a responsible relationship with alcohol, you have to do one thing: keep the cap on the alcohol, and once you do that, you'll uncap your massive amounts of potential within your life. Take care of yourself. Speak to you in the next video. Onwards and upwards. Bye now.